I'm still alive, and I hate facial hair. I don't fully know why, but for my entire life, I've always hated facial hair on myself or anyone in my family. From the time I first started growing facial hair, I would shave every single day. Even though there would barely be anything there after 24 hours, I still hated seeing that shadow of stubble on my face. Yet, as you may have noticed, I currently have a goatee, and I hate it so much. I've wanted to get rid of this thing for the past 3 months, ever since it started. Now you may be wondering why I've done this to myself then. And it's a bit of a long story, but I promise it's interesting. So about a year and a half ago, I made this video when I started my first job at what we'll call Schmedieval Schmines. It's essentially a medieval experience where you cheer for your knight to win the tournament. There's a king and a queen, and the whole tournament is presided over by the Lord Marshal. And from my second day there, I wanted to become Lord Marshal. He rode on a horse, was the master of ceremonies for the full thing, and it just seemed like the most fun thing possible. But little did I know, that would be a lot harder than I initially thought. So I first learned that you had to be 18 to join the showcast. I was saddened by this initially, since I was 16 at the time, knowing I would have to wait a full 15 months to join. So in the meantime, I made it my mission to find out everything I could about Showcast and what you had to do to join. I spoke with pretty much everyone I could who was the king or Lord Marshal. I had never been excited to turn 18, but now I was counting down the days. I also made it my goal to be as dedicated as possible to working in retail. I figured if I did a really good job, it could improve my chances of getting into Showcast. So I did everything assigned to me without complaining. I worked to give the guests who came to the castle the best possible experience and to become the very best out of any of the employees at interacting with them. Because of all this, 7 months after I joined, I was awarded the honor of Team Member of the Month. I became the 5th person in retail to ever achieve this, and the very first in the entire location's history to be under 18. As the months went by, I started to work at the armory selling swords. I slowly became a better salesperson, working my way up to be tied for the very best in the department. Then in December of 2024, I sold a suit of armor. Suits of armor at Schmedieval Schmines cost between $3,500 and $6,000, and only 4 had been sold in the location's history. And I sold the 5th. But then the very next day, I sold the second one. I made $13,000 in 2 days and became the first person since the company started in 1983 to sell suits of armor on back-to-back days. Because of this, I broke pretty much every sales record at this location. I was proud of myself, but I didn't lose sight of my main goal. This is all for the Showcast, and at the time I was just a few months away from turning 18. Then about 3 months before my 18th birthday, I heard that auditions would be coming up. Over the past few months, I started to work out, but from then on, I worked out 4 days a week. And I doubt you can tell at all, although I haven't gone in a couple weeks because, well, you'll see. And to be honest, I hated working out. I never liked exercise, and it was pretty miserable for me. But I always kept my goal in mind. It would all be worth it when I got into Showcast, and I knew the odds were stacked against me. Everyone else who was the king or Lord Marshal, the 2 parts I could audition for, were in their 20s or 30s. I asked advice from a couple of them on how to look older, and they all told me the same thing: grow facial hair. So I did the thing I'd hated all my life and stopped shaving. And you can see the progression of this if you scroll back through the channel. And it might sound silly, but that was really hard for me. Every day for the past few months, I've looked at myself in the mirror and wanted to shave. I hate it so much, and I don't feel like myself. But like the mantra I've been repeating to myself for a year and a half, it's all for Showcast. I turned 18, then heard that auditions would be happening just a couple weeks from then. It ended up being a bit longer, but 2 weeks before my audition, I got the script to practice. And although it wasn't required, I memorized the lines for both parts. I spent hours in my house's garage, practicing the lines over and over again. I got a new haircut a week and a half before the audition, bought a brand new outfit, and in between my finals and practicing for my speech at graduation, I spent so much time prepping for this audition. Then on May 2nd, the day of my audition, I went in for the moment I'd been preparing for 17 months. So much had led to this. I knew there were a few other people in the castle who had auditioned, and at least one person from outside. I knew I was the youngest of them all, but I had also probably prepared the most. I thought if I just had a good enough audition, my age wouldn't matter. And it had to work out. I'd spent so much time on this after all. So I went in, did the audition, and it went really well. I wasn't too nervous, and I was able to have fun and show all the work I'd put in. It had been a while since I had acted, but I was still able to put on a great performance. The manager told me I nailed it, and said I would hear back in a couple weeks. But she also told me there were a total of 6 other people auditioning, and they only needed 2. Admittedly, that made me nervous, but I had done all I could, so I left. And so I waited. I graduated, and in my speech I encouraged the graduating class to try new things, even if they're afraid to fail. But the truth is, I was sort of talking to myself there. I was starting to grow insecure about my chances, and was trying to convince myself that if I failed, it wouldn't all be a waste. As the weeks went by, I realized I'd done my graduation with this goatee, and a couple days later, I took my passport photo. I'd be stuck with those pictures for years, and if I didn't get in, they'd be a painful reminder of my failure. Which brings us to today. If you've been doing the math at home, it's now been a couple weeks since my audition, and 2 days ago, I got my answer. And I didn't get into the Showcast. I saw 2 of the other people who auditioned observing the tournament, so I sent an email to my manager, and she confirmed that I failed. But I don't regret auditioning. I still tried, and I'm glad that I did. The only thing worse than not getting into Showcast would be thinking that I could have done it if I'd only tried. It did make sense, and yesterday the manager spoke to me and told me that I did everything right, but I just looked a little too young. Yet, I was still hoping against hope that if I did well enough, they would be able to look past that barrier. Now, everyone's been telling me that I can audition again, but that's not really true. At the end of the summer, I'm going off to college. If I'd gotten into Showcast, I would have stayed, and I would have just Ubered to work. But since I didn't, I'll be leaving retail at the end of the summer, and I just won't be around for the next round of auditions. I still have other dreams, and I'm not gonna wait to take another try at this and jeopardize my chances at working for Disney. All I can do now is congratulate the people who did get in, and try not to feel sad when I see them performing. That's the weird thing about this particular part. I can't just be rejected and move on. I have to watch them achieving my goal. But I refuse to let this crush me. I'm just gonna look at them, smile, and like the Beach Boys say, wouldn't it be nice? And move on. But since my chances at Showcast are well and truly dead, I do get one consolation prize. If it's not coming across well on camera, I am very disappointed by this. I've always been very goal-oriented, and this is starting to shake some of my faith in my ability to achieve my dreams. I did everything I could, but I still failed. So I want to take this as a new beginning. I'm really going to put everything I've got into making sure I can get to work at Disney. And of course, I'm not mad at anyone, including myself, for me not getting the part. I just look too young, and there's not really anything I can do about that. And I really respect the manager for having a meeting with me after my audition to tell me that my age was really the only problem. The last issue now is that pretty much everyone in my life has known I wanted to join Showcast for nearly 2 years. Already, they're starting to offer their sympathy, and I do really appreciate it. But in the words of John Green, there are far more important things to worry about than my professional life. I kind of just want everyone to forget I ever auditioned, so I can enjoy my last couple months in retail. Back to normal. And as I just said there, I'm finally back to normal. I think it's gonna take me a little while before I recognize my own face again. But thank you all for listening to this very long story. Hopefully it'll be a little while before I make another sincere video. Then again, I'm making so many these days that it might just be a couple weeks. But that's it for today. Thanks for watching, and Nate, I'll see you tomorrow.